twice, at least once it's in my possession.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, so we'll start with Mary Oliver today. I love this poem. It's called The Black Walnut Tree. My mother and I debate. We could sell the black walnut tree to the lumberman and pay off the mortgage. Likely some storm anyway will churn down its dark boughs, smashing the house. We talk slowly, two women trying in a difficult time to be wise. Roots in the cellar drains, I say, and she replies that the leaves are getting heavier every year and the fruit harder to gather away. But something brighter than money moves in our blood, an edge sharp and quick as a trowel that wants us to dig and sow. So we talk, but we don't do anything. That night I dream of my fathers out of Bohemia, filling the blue fields of fresh and generous Ohio with leaves and vines and orchards. What my mother and I both know is that we'd crawl with shame in the emptiness we'd made in our own and our father's backyard. So the walnut tree swings through another year of sun and leaping winds, of leaves and bounding fruit, and month after month, the whip crack of the mortgage. So, something brighter than money. Or as Robert Bly says, animals give up all their money every year. That's his description of fall. So our third and final meeting related to a deeper look at the 5 elements. So let's start with any questions that you might have from the first 2. And I want to thank my 2 waters who very sweetly and kindly connected with me about their experience of what we talked about last time. That was very dear to me that I heard from you. So any questions, any comments, anything that you're confused about, or?
I have a question.
Yes.
This may be like a very simple question, I don't know, but I was thinking about it today as I'm thinking about like my secondary elements. And I know you talk about like when somebody's stressed, what do they go to? But then I was kind of thinking about like, it depends on the stressor as to what I go to. Does that make sense? So how do you kind of determine that then? Because like, I think, oh, well, you know, if I've lost my kid in the grocery store, I have one stress response versus, or if it's something else, it would be, you know, a different stress response. So do you have any thought, any direction on that?
Yes, because it's actually a great question, because you're also illuminating how we move in and out of different elemental frameworks with the various areas of our life. Our constitution doesn't change as we move from framework to framework, but the framework itself. I mean, parenthood is an excellent example of that, where people may think that they're a really strong earth element, and then their kids grow up and leave home and they realize, no, actually, I was a water the whole time. I was just really immersed in the energy of earth in order to raise my children and be really dynamically engaged with that process. So different stressors causing a different response in part would be a bit like that, a bit like, oh, okay, so if it's, you know, my child lost in the grocery store, it's my, you know, it's the mama bear that comes up and I'm worried about them. Where are they? You know, or if it's a work issue and I've had to, you know, and it's not fair, and the way I'm being seen in the scenario is not fair, maybe it brings up my wood.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so the context has a lot to do with it. But ultimately, if you, so one way you could look at it is, if you're telling that story later to someone, what's the residual emotion that you're left with? Right? You were worried about your little one being lost in the store, right? So that's an earth context, and it seems like an earth scenario, earth response. But maybe later it's like, I hate it when he does it. It makes me so crazy. Or, do you get angry in the retelling? Or
Okay.
is it, oh my God, so many things could have happened. It just paralyzes me with fear to think of what might have happened if I hadn't found him.
Okay, so
So
thinking of it afterwards, really, and where you're at.
will probably bring up what your habitual or your intrinsic response would be.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Because there's distance from it. You're not in the context. You're in your own. You're in your own energy. You're reflecting on it from your own space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I'll think about that. I'll have to I was thinking of different scenarios, and I'm like, okay, this time in this scenario, I panic. In this scenario, I'm really angry. And in this scenario, I'm like really worried. So like, I don't know.
Well, yeah. And in some of those scenarios, we could probably look at your response and go, oh, anybody would have responded that way.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right. Just because of the nature of the situation.
Yeah.
But then reflecting on it, or two people talking about the situation later, then in that conversation, you will probably see their constitution in that discussion.
Okay.
Like, I don't know why you were so afraid. That little asshole, he ran off again. You've got to, you got to tell him not to do that. Oh, the inner sailor's out already. Okay. But the other one was, yeah, but so many things could have happened. It could have been terrible. So you see, just in the conversation, how two people who were both worried at the time, looking for that little one.
Yeah.
Later, in reflection, they're back in their own zone.
Okay.
Because, and I love these kinds of questions because it really brings up the kind of the deeper nature of the question, because we cannot fit all of human experience, all of humanness in 5 flavors, right? It's so richly layered and nuanced and subtly expressed in so many different ways. There's and we can even look at that, how that goes together with various other ways of looking at people, right? So I'm primary metal. I was born when the sun was in the sign of Leo. There are other metals who were born under the sign of Aquarius or Gemini or Taurus or Scorpio or Sagittarius, and they are going to all be metals, but they're going to express that a little bit differently because they have this other additional overlay which plays within that constitutional energy and gives it color and texture and nuance. Even the Chinese talked about the year you're born, the day you're born, the hour you're born, the minute you're born. Each of those has one of the 12 energies associated with it, and each of those 12 energies expressed through all 5 elements. So in the year that I was born, during the sign of Leo, I was born in the year of the metal monkey. Now, that doesn't make me a metal element. There were lots of other elements born during that year who were fire and water and earth and wood. But it does mean that how I express that metal monkey energy is going to be a little bit different from how a water element person expresses that energy. So just to kind of, it's just important to hold all of this so lightly in your mind and allow it to be really fluid and textured and nuanced. That makes sense?
Thank you so much. That's
Oh,
very
you're
helpful,
welcome.
Debra. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
No problem. Hey, where's our Rhea tonight?
In Europe,
Oh, awesome.
she does a biking tour thing.
Of course she does.
She raises money and then she leads people through Europe, which Rhea said she had to get in shape for, which tells me
Stop.
it's not a biking trip that I want to be on if she had to work up to get in shape. So
I don't even want to think about being on a bike on that trip. How can you possibly eat foie gras and drink wine till all hours and then get up again and
I think she doesn't do that part. Yes, Donna, she's in Germany. Yes. She does.
Okay.
It's a
She's in
charity.
Germany. Oh, okay. Well, they don't have foie gras there, but they have other good things. Okay. Other questions? No?
I don't see
Shall
any.
we? Okay. Well, then I guess we'll jump into wood. Our wood element, which is what we are in at the moment in the Northern Hemisphere, though I'm sure that it is expressing differently in all the different places where we are. You know, right here, we've got gray skies and it's probably, well, no, I think it got up to 70 today. That's one of the warmer days we've had so far. But as we talked about before, with that transition, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, it's got a lot of glare on it, huh? Is that better?
I think it's good. Does anyone not see it?
All right. So as we talked about before, at that spring equinox, all of the incredible underground energy that's been transiting the underworld, kind of lurking in the deep of the yin, in the mystery, feeding the roots of trees, being compacted at incredible high pressure into the seeds and the nuts under the ground. So when we get to this place where that evenness of light and dark hits the planetary zone, that incredible contraction of yin is now released forcefully, suddenly, directly, and with intent. So now we come into the new yang of the year. I won't cut my head off. Let me know if you need to see some more of that. So the wood energy is really characterized by this incredible amount of force and intention. So one of the images that I use for the wood energy, and we may have talked about this already, but I'm going to talk about it again, is the archer with the bow. And the bow is traditionally made of yew wood, or there's certain other woods that are well known for bow wood. And the bowstring may be gut, or it may also be plant fiber, traditionally. So in pulling back that bowstring, there's an incredible amount of tension and pressure in that bow and on that string. So the wood energy, the kind of the focus of the wood energy is deciding where the appropriate target is for all that energy to go. And once they decide on the target, then the bowstring is released, and that incredible tension then propels that arrow, which is also made of wood traditionally, to that target. or to whatever happens to step into the trajectory of that arrow. You know, my teacher would always talk about make sure that you choose the target for your bow, because if you don't, the bow will choose its own target. And that's one of the ways that the wood energy can get out of balance. Not choosing the target, but letting the power go. So one of the big physical things that wood constitution people deal with is incredible tension and pressure. So when they've got that bowstring drawn back and they've got the target in their sights and they're ready to let go, the worst thing you can do to a wood constitution person is say, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait, no, we can't, no, not yet. Hang on, wait. And if that goes on long enough, they will turn the bow around to you, because they've got to let it go. They've got to release the incredible buildup of pressure and tension that's holding that desire to fly forward in abeyance. So wood rules the sinews. So all of the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles, all of the things that we refer to as the sinews. And one of the ways that you can sometimes identify wood people, this is not always true, it's really true of Rhea, which is too bad that we don't have Rhea to put her beautiful arms up, is that whether male or female, very often wood people have the most incredibly sinewy arms. The definition in what's under the surface of the skin is so beautifully sculpted, even if they don't exercise. They have kind of a natural tone in the muscles that's often evident. So this idea of being thwarted, being prevented from moving toward the goal or the target that they've identified, this is one of the reasons why the main unskillful emotion for wood is anger. The reaction against being thwarted, the explosion of energy that follows frustration. So we often think about anger as being, not really having any redeeming qualities, but that's not really true. Anger has as its positive motivation the desire to make sure that boundaries are respected and enforced. So, my son went to get the little kids, and the oldest one is upstairs, Nolan. Now, if he were to come down here while I'm talking and be standing here, Mammy, I want to talk to you. Just a minute, honey. I'm doing something. Mammy, just a minute. Mammy, stop. He's pushing over the boundary that I'm making by asking him to wait, and it accelerates and amplifies. That's not the word I'm looking for. Accelerates. It gets big until the only expression left to make the boundary absolutely clear is anger. Right? Now, if his little brother, who does this to me all the time and makes me crazy, 20 months old, and he loves to run into the street because it gets such a big response. And fortunately, we live on a very quiet street. But I don't walk out there and take him by the hand and no, Mimi says, no, Augie, come on, stay on the curb. It's like, no, I run out there, I grab him and pick him up and look at him in the eyes and say, don't you ever do that. That's so dangerous. So the quality of wrathful enforcement of necessity is also a quality of wood that's incredibly protective. There are many there are many spiritual traditions that have wrathful deities, and the wrathful deities are not just hanging around being pissed off. They're they are protective, and they are maintaining the appropriate boundaries that need to be maintained in different areas of human experience. So the idea of anger and wrathfulness as having this positive aspect of protection and containment, I think, is one that we tend to overlook because so many of us have had experiences with anger that has been unskillfully expressed. And maybe we have been the one who has made the unskillful expression. I'm going to show you a book because I think I have it right here. I wish that I had kept track of how many of these I bought over the years. I think this book was originally published in 1983. And it's called The Dance of Anger by Harriet Goldher Lerner. If you don't know this book, it's a fabulous book on anger and its expression in many different ways. I always have a copy of this book in my office, and I loan it out, and sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. But now I think you can get them for about $1.50 at a used bookstore. So it's a very useful tool for helping people to come to terms in skillful ways with managing that wood, so that they don't have to live in constant stress and pressure and repression, but can also, yes, that's right, Harriet Goldher Lerner, but can also find ways to move that energy out of the body so that it doesn't erode the tissues, right? Because this is high octane energy, right? There's basically rocket fuel that water put into the plants, and then the spring equinox detonated it, and it's flying into the environment as this incredible power and direction. So what else was I going to say about that? So wood's virtue, we talked about last time, water's virtue is wisdom. Wood's virtue is benevolence. And it's easy to be benevolent when you have good boundaries. Because you are plugged into, like the young shoot, you're deeply plugged into the earth, and you're deeply plugged into the sky. So you are in relationship with the two primary sources of chi running through the body. And so that makes benevolence easy. It just flows out. And one of the things that Donna often says of wood is that they are some of the kindest people on the planet. And they can be incredibly kind, incredibly tender, incredibly considerate at the same time. We don't often think of those aspects of wood because their general expression is usually so intense. So it's interesting to me also that the wood season begins at the same time. So the beginning of spring, and that spring equinox is also the beginning of the astrological year, beginning with Aries. So we've got Aries, the god of war, is the first trimester of the wood element. So we come into the wood element on this incredible amount of force and energy that has a quality to it that can feel very martial, And this is one of the ways in which wood can become difficult in relationship to those of us who are not wood constitution, in that, like metal, the other yang expression of the qi, the yang yin, whereas wood is our yang yang, there's a strong element of control. The arising of yang into the upper world is new, and the wood element is trying to hang on to it, trying to keep control of it. It's this incredible blast furnace of energy. And so this idea of the martial energy, or the energy that's regimented, that has a lot in common with metal, can be really hard to come to terms with sometimes. What else did I want to say about that? The word anger comes from the Old Norse word anger, meaning trouble or affliction. That which pains or afflicts, or the passive feeling it produces: trouble, affliction, vexation, sorrow. It's interesting that in a modern sense of the language, I think vexation is the one that we most focus on. But this idea of being troubled is one that is a strong one for the wood element. And the biggest preoccupation in that, one of the things that they're most troubled by, is fairness and lack of fairness. And if any of you have raised a wood constitution child, you have probably heard that ad nauseum. It's just not fair. It's just not fair. It's just not fair. I have a long time client who also became a student. And so we've worked together now for probably 15, 16 years. And we just had a session yesterday. And she is very strong wood energy. And almost invariably, it's become a joke between us now, almost invariably, she will, throw up her hands in frustration and say, if I only knew why this was happening, I'd be okay. And now all I have to do is make that gesture, because I know. So this belief in cause and effect as being kind of a substantial path to security is one that you often find in wood. If I can just figure this out, if I can just make a rule, if I can just get that legislation passed, if I can just, if I only knew why this was happening, then I could find the solution. The wood energy is incredibly solution oriented. And part of that is because they want to find the appropriate target for that high powered energy. And so for them, understanding the why seems like a really important piece of determining the appropriate target. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You may know the why and still have to live with something that's really difficult. You may know that your elderly father is going to show up in the doorway backlit in his chonies at 3 a.m. screaming that someone's breaking into the house. And you know the reason why is because he's got dementia, but he's still waking you up. So the why doesn't always solve it, but there's something about that wood energy that loves to seek out the why. And it's part of that yang energy, because the wood element has such an affinity for the hero's journey, for the hero energy. Woods love to advocate for others. They love to solve problems. They love to be, they love to ride it on the white horse and solve the problem. And it can be very frustrating to them when you don't participate in that story with them. And this can be a real problem in relationship if one partner really wants to be the kind of the savior archetype in the relationship, and the other partner is like, no, I just need to blow off some steam here. This does not require a solution. When I need a solution, you are the person I'm going to come to, but right now, that's not what I need. But they're very strongly driven by this kind of hero archetype and the desire to serve. They really do have the sweetest servant's heart. And one of the expressions of that from Chinese medicine, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I do it, is that from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., there's gallbladder, the most yang expression of the wood energy, on the job outside the throne room, so heart can go into her deepest sleep and be in her most vulnerable space, trusting that she's held in complete safety by that energy. And that dynamic between gallbladder and heart, I find so touching, because that really is the time when heart is very vulnerable. It's not the time when most heart attacks happen, but it is the time that's very vulnerable for heart. Another thing that the Chinese say about gallbladder, and gallbladder, like the uterus, or my uterus shirt today, the gallbladder, the uterus, and the brain are what the Chinese refer to as extraordinary organs. And it's interesting to me that probably if they could yank the brain out, they would, but hysterectomies and removal of gallbladders are the top two surgeries done in this country. Or at least the last time I looked, they were. And I can't remember which one was first. I think at one time it was gallbladders and then it was hysterectomies. They kind of go back and forth. So here are these two organs that the Chinese thought of as extraordinary because of the magic involved in their functioning. And we just figure they're optional. If they're not actively doing a job, they're out of here. And of course, there are times when there's a life-threatening situation, and that must happen. Same with the spleen, life-threatening situation, and the spleen's got to come out if it's ruptured. But the gallbladder has been in many traditional cultures a very sacred organ. My teacher talks about a tradition where the people call the gallbladder the home of the fire soul, and that during the night, the fire soul, which does our dreaming, leaves the gallbladder and goes out into other worlds to do what it does at night. And then as the body starts to wake up, it rushes back into the gallbladder before we wake up. And so they say that when in those times when you are suddenly awakened, or you wake up disoriented, or you're like not quite all here, or you've got a dream that just won't leave you alone after you awaken, they say that your fire soul didn't make it back into the gallbladder in time. It's still trying to settle. But one of the things that the Chinese say about the gallbladder that I have found incredibly useful is they say the job of the gallbladder is to digest the impossible. So the bile the bile is now a big topic of research. They're finding out all kinds of crazy stuff about bile. They found bile cells in the brain. It's not, it's not what they thought it was. Go figure. So, oh, thank you, ladies. So the gallbladder concentrates and consecrates the bile for use in the small intestine, and it's a surfactant. It's basically a soap that cleans the small intestine, picks up toxins and things that should not be in the body, and packages them for removal, sending them off down the pathway to the anus. So this idea of the gallbladder energy as being so deeply connected to those things that are impossible to metabolize. This also extends to our traumas, the ways in which we were not able to make that boundary in a situation, the ways in which we were not protected in a situation, the ways in which trauma lingers in the tissues and can't be metabolized. This is also the province of gallbladder. In Chinese medicine, very often they use gallbladder to treat mental illness. So that one of the things that can happen, this isn't always the case, but one of the things that can happen is that when you've had your gallbladder removed, there are a lot of things that are not getting packaged for removal. It's not like you don't have bile. Of course you have bile, and the cystic duct kind of pooches out and makes a tiny little mini gallbladder to try and hang on to some bile and get it to concentrate. But things change in there after your gallbladder is gone. And you don't always get to move everything out of the body that needs to move. But the body's really smart. It's not going to keep that stuff in the viscera. It's not going to keep that around the organs. It's going to push that into the extremities to try and sequester it, right? Just like carbon sequestering in the earth. Now, it doesn't usually go into the shoulders, elbows, and wrists because that's usually upstream of where it already is. I mean, it can do, especially if it's coming down. But if it's already in the viscera, it's usually going into the hips, into the knees, into the ankles. And so you see a lot of people after, this was certainly true for my mother, after they lose their gallbladder, they don't change how they eat, they don't change how they think, they don't change how they live, and then they need a hip replacement, and then they need a knee replacement, and then they need ankle surgeries. So it is a big deal, this protective quality of wood, and this incredible advocacy that wood does on behalf of the body. So what else did I want to say? Oh, the other thing with anger as well, when we think of stress is kind of a general term, and we know that stress can put us in fight flight. We know that stress can activate triple whammer, but stress can also have a strong component of anger involved with it. And that when that anger comes up really brightly and strongly, it activates the HPA axis. And so now you've got the adrenals involved. So for someone who's having a lot of wood issues and they are having a lot of anger, don't be surprised if the adrenals show up, because it may not show up in triple whammer. It may show up in gallbladder. It may show up in liver. And liver, of course, we know is the yin expression of anger. And so it's the anger either that we withhold, that seething kind of anger, that the resentment. One of my favorite descriptions of resentment is where you take the poison and wait for the other person to die. But the inability to stay actively angry at ourselves kind of degrades into low self-esteem. So that instead of always kind of being whipped up in anger, it's like, oh, I can't believe I did that again. I'm so stupid. Oh my God, why did I say that? What an idiot. I can't believe I did that again. You know, this is the province of liver. And another aspect of this, because liver is so deeply involved in perimenopause and the transition between being reproductively viable and moving into the next stage of life, is, you know, liver is super involved in that process, because it has to regulate the changing hormone ratios as they're dropping precipitously, right? So liver is really busy. But it's also not uncommon for anger that has not had a place to go, or has not been expressed, or has been seething in the body, to become uncontrollable at that time. So a lot of women in perimenopause need a lot of work with wood. They need to find their own inner advocate. They need to find the way to be skillful in their expression of frustration and anger, resentment, aggravation, and it can be a real problem especially at that time. What else did I want to talk about? So just when we talk about the peaceful assertion of the self as one of the positive aspects of wood, being able to assert and assert a boundary is a direct reflection of good self-respect, good self-esteem. So that ability to have good self-assertion is an outward demonstration of a good inward self-respect and self-esteem. And we see this over and over and over and over in the treatment room, where not just with women, but especially with women who come in, and all the people in their lives are just walking all over them, because they can't say no, they can't make a boundary, and they are so riddled with resentment. We often think about this as earth, but it is very much a wood issue. It's very much a wood issue as well. Not having the good self-esteem, to be able to have self-respect enough to assert that boundary. I don't know if you can hear the little wood upstairs. He's losing it. Good. I'm glad you can't hear. He is such a shrieker. Oh my gosh. His constitution was so obvious from the time he was 2, because he would be really happy and sweet and everything was good, and then he wasn't, then he was thwarted from something, and he would go from 0 to asshole in less than 3 seconds. It's very funny. He's a very strong wood, and he's also a digital, which is an interesting combination. But I apologize in advance for the inevitable expression of anger that's going to happen upstairs. One of the things that I came up with when I was teaching this class for a friend of mine named Kathy Gould, who's a wonderful kinesiologist, and she used to have a practice in Santa Cruz. And I was teaching some of her students, and we were talking about wood, and I came up with this exercise for them, and we went out in her yard and did it. And I never did find out if there was any blowback from her neighbors. But it turns out it's a really useful exercise because you move the content without connecting to the content. And I call it the angry ABCs. So it's best if you, and there were a lot of Japanese students in this class. And that's how I knew it was an effective exercise, because they were pained to do it. And then they wanted the first time, and then they wanted to do it every day. So you basically set it up the way you would the blowout, this one. But you go, it's best outdoors, and you get plugged into the ground, and you just express every aspect of the situation that has you riled up by reciting the alphabet. So it'd be A, B, C, D. So you just continue through the alphabet, and as you go along, you will gradually lose steam. And oh my God, are you hearing this at all? He's really over the top. Okay, do the ABCs. So one of the inadvertent connections that this makes is that all of the really strong emotions, anger included, need to find a way to language. And so even if you're using the alphabet not to make words, but to express feelings, it still seems to serve that purpose in a way. So it's a little bit like the old counting to 10, but it gives you a little bit more time to really get into it. All right. Any questions about Woods so far? Yeah. And voicing it makes it not get stuck in the church pecker. Exactly.
I was wondering, for gallbladder, for people that don't have a gallbladder, do you often have a certain exercise or two, anything specific that you usually have them do that is really helpful?
Yeah, well, one thing, they've got to make changes to their diet. They just, their doctors will tell them, oh no, you can just eat whatever you want. But no, it does not work that way. They've got to eat an organic diet. They've got to get good fats and not bad fats, especially fats. They have to pay attention to. I don't have people flush gallbladder because it's just hard to teach them to do that. But I will have them do the gallbladder lymphatics a lot, right? Because there's still lymph service to that organ, even though the organ's been removed, and the cystic duct does turn into kind of a little mini gallbladder. So you want to give that as much help as you can. Also, we'll just have them just kind of cradle it.
Okay.
One thing I found that people with who've had their gallbladders removed seem to do well with is intermittent fasting. And my favorite version of that is an old one called the leptin diet. It's on the wellnessresources.com website. Let me type that out for you. That's a website that was created by a nutritionist who's since passed away, and his family is keeping it going. I love their products, but he was always incredibly generous with information. So if you want any information about dietary supplements, they often do meta-analysis of research papers. It's just an all-around good website. But he was the first one that I ever heard of talking about intermittent fasting, and he has a particular plan for it. And I've found that people who've lost their gallbladders do particularly well with that, because it gives the liver a lot of time off. Right, the snacking crap is one of the worst things you can do for your liver, because nobody snacks during the night. Well, okay, there may be some people who wake up and go and get a snack in the middle of the night. Probably not because they're actually hungry, but our bodies are designed to go to sleep and stay asleep, but not have our blood sugar crash, right? Because that's the liver provides sugar to the blood through glycogen. I always get glycogen and glucagon mixed up. Glycogen, I think it is. And triglycerides. So when you have periods of time when you don't eat, then your liver can clear out the old triglycerides and really function optimally and support that gallbladder or the little mini gallbladder, the cystic duct, with better quality bile on a steadier basis. Yeah, I've been doing that since 2007. Some people lose weight. I didn't lose weight, but it got rid of all my perimenopausal symptoms, which was good enough for me. All right, so we talked about how last time that water is damaged by excessive standing. That's because of the adrenals. Wood is damaged by excessive physical exertion, and that's because of that physical exertion is being carried out by the sinews. Right? So it's very important for those wood element funks to remember that they can sit down and have a rest, even if not all the things on their to-do list have been crossed off. It's okay. All right. I think I'm going to leave wood now and move on to fire, because otherwise we will not get to our last three.
Do you need a yam break?
Oh, that's a really good idea. I will be right back.
Everyone,
You can
can we take
you can explain the yam break.
Okay. Does anyone need to take a break? Maybe a 3-minute break? She put in yams right before this, and she needs to go get the yams before they explode in the oven. Okay. So 3-minute break. It is 4:58. We'll be back at 5:01.
Oh, that was a good thing. I thought I had set it for 350. Went up there and it was on 500.
Oops.
Toasty yams.
We took a quick potty break.
Oh, good.
We still have 2.5 minutes because we didn't have yams in, but we have the dog yelling at the
My
worker.
poor yams. Teresa, I thought I had set it for 350. I went up and it was set for 500. Or maybe I set it for 350 and one of those boys fiddled with the dials again.
Oh,
Which-
no. That might have,
We'll see.
maybe he counted instead of saying A, maybe he went 1, 2, 3,
3, 4.
until he got to 500.
Yeah. That would not surprise me.
Did it blow up in the stove?
What's that?
Did they blow up?
No,
Okay, good.
no. Hopefully they're just really soft.
Okay. They'll be delicious.
Okay. So are we back? Not yet. We'll give them another
Yeah,
couple.
there's a
minutes.
few people. Give them one more minute, sorry.
All right.
So say the last thing about wood and the sinews and the exercise, because I'm a wood through and through, and good exercise is the only thing that keeps my head straight.
Oh, and exercise is
Hard exercise.
essential for wood energy. Absolutely essential for wood energy, and especially, if my little wood daughter had not had water polo when she was in high school, heaven help us. The combination of the intense physical workouts and the highly competitive games is what really worked for her. But you have to know when you're at your limit and back away from that, even if it means something is left undone, even if you haven't made it all the way to completion. So it's that balance between work and rest. It's the chariot card from the tarot. We see that woody chariot driver. Actually, there were always two guys in the chariot. One, the driver, and then the warrior. But it's just flat out. So it's like recognizing that moment where the tipping point is, and not using the external as the decision maker, but using the internal as the decision maker. It's like, no, I can feel that I can't push this. So I'm gonna live with the discomfort of not having that finished, so that I can feel okay enough to actually do it tomorrow. Plus all the things on tomorrow's to-do list. I mean, I had the most remarkable conversation with my daughter when she was 19. She was in college and she just moved to Portland. She'd been at art school in Oakland, and she wasn't happy with the scene there, so she went to Portland. And we were talking on the phone, and she was telling me all the thousands of things that she had to do every day. And then she was saying, and I have to find, I need to find some kind of community water polo team. I said, well, honey, do you really have time for that? And she goes, oh, I have to do this, Mom, because if I don't have a place to put my competitive feelings, it trashes my relationships. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I had nowhere near that self-awareness at 19 or 29 or even 39. I mean, somebody argued that I don't have it now. But just that understanding of how that high octane fuel runs in the body and what it can do to the tissues when it's run too long.
Deborah, did it help that it was also water that maybe fed the wood, or is it just the exercise?
I think the water may have helped, because she does have a lot of wood too, or sorry, a lot of earth also. But I think it was just the incredible. I mean, it's an incredibly physical, competitive, vicious sport. I mean, she would come home just black and blue from these games. It was unbelievable. It was like cage fighting in a pool. And she loved it. And she loved it. And this is a very wood constitution thing too. She was really, she was letter of the law, fair player. She did not pull any dirty tricks under the water. She did not do a lot of the stuff that people do in water polo because she felt like that was not good for the game. She was going to play by the rules. She was going to do it right, and she was going to play fair. And if anybody messed with her, oh my God, they found out how good a player she could be. It just spurred her on to even more excellence. It was like she would push herself harder and get better and go further. Just from that's where she would put that anger that people were not respecting the game. She so would. Oh, okay. So, all right, let's go on to fire. So, fire is the natural outcome of spring's big orgy. So, that springtime energy, we talk about spring fever and all of the energy of spring, where that force of eros, the vitality of the world, comes up into the body, into the plants, into the skies, coming up from the dark. And nature is just saying, yes. So then we get to summer, we get to the fullness of the expression of the yang. And you've probably heard this over and over and over and over and over and over, but here's another way it shows up, which is that yang expresses the yin. So in all of that incredible holographic intensity that water generated under the ground, when we come around to the summertime and the fire element, it gets lit up and becomes massively manifest. So that the energy of the yang energy of the fire is expressing the yin of the water. So very often in Chinese medicine, you'll see them talk about this dynamic relationship between fire and water, and that's why, because a lot of times students will be like, well, why don't they ever talk about wood or metal or earth? What's that about? It's like, well, because this is that dynamic force between the hidden and the visible, between the yin and the yang, and water is the hidden mystery, and fire is the bright expression. So the fire energy is all about the muchness everywhere. So much muchness. and that generation of heat of the fire. And we all know that heat rises. So this energy and you can see the energy rise from the fire. On a hot day, you can see the heat waves rise from the blacktop. Everything in the world is kind of hot and rising up. So this banquet of manifestation in the visible world of all of the possibility, all of the variability, all of the incredible creativity of nature pouring out into the world, expressing the constraints that it's been under, expressing the resources that it's been offered, expressing the explosion of possibility, but it's not inside. We're not thinking about it. It's out here. It's everywhere. So that one of the fine qualities of fire is novelty, and this desire for novelty, this thirst, this hunger to taste everything. So we get this archetype of the hedonist, of the lover, of the gourmand, that this kind of languid, hedonistic, enjoying it all to the nth degree kind of energy and fire. And that can go terribly out of control. as we in the West know very firsthand. So there is a rising of the spirit that happens in fire as well. When we were talking about, I'm glad this came to mind, because I wasn't sure later if I remembered to tell you that when we were talking about the Wuji, and this little creative energy comes down and it passes through the Geryi Qian and the will and intent of heaven, and it gets imprinted with the curriculum, or with the character, with the purpose, and then it comes into governing 20, and then it goes like a little silver cord and lodges in the heart. Did I tell you that part, or did I forget that part? I forgot that part. Okay, so this is where that part becomes really important. Because the heart is the nature of fire. So this incredible manifestation is the mirror of all the possibilities contained in the heart, that mirrors the incredible possibilities that exist in the Wuji. Only we're having the experience of it in a physical reality, in a body, looking at this unbelievably beautiful array of possibilities. And even when they're not appealing to look at, they still have beauty. Even if the beauty is in the inability for it to be suppressed or to be oppressed, that energy still manages to manifest, still manages to explode in all directions. So the heart and that association with the nature of all possibilities is very much that energy of fire. So in fire, we, I would say summertime is probably my slowest time in my office, because when in the fall and winter, when people are internal, they're really focused on what's wrong with them. They're really up against themselves. They're really in the mirror. They're really feeling everything. Spring starts and the body starts to wake up, but then summer starts and the weather is nice and you're outside and you're doing, and the attention becomes much more outward focused, and then everything seems so much better. So this lightness and optimism of fire, this joyful engagement with the world, this is that quality of sociability that fire controls, that the hypothalamus controls, these social behaviors, so that when somebody comes into my office in the summertime and they're exhausted, right? So they're not able to enjoy all this beautiful summer. So they're kind of thrown back into the winter, and they're kind of, oh, why do I feel so crappy? I always ask them, what were you doing in February? What were you doing in January? And almost every time they'll say, oh, I had this, my parent moved in, or I got a new job, or I went on this big trip, or one of my kids came home to live. There's always something big that took them out of the yin. They had to do something. So they didn't renew the bank account in the wintertime. So by the time it comes summer, they've burned through their chi. So now they're having that downside of fire, which is burnout, because there's nothing to draw from. The fire is not rooted. So this idea of the fire being rooted through the earth and into the water is very important, because without that, that's me. I'm experiencing that. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa. that's where you get this just either out of control and crash, or just this crushing fatigue that's very hard to. The flu will let you rest now. It will indeed. Let's see. So our fastest physical communication takes place by the fire of electricity. That's our nervous system. And our nervous system, of course, is ruled by bladder. But the electricity is coming from fire. So this is another relationship between fire and water that's very crucial. Another thing that would be an expression of out of balance fire that we see in autoimmunity would be the cytokine storm, where the body just goes into this almost unstoppable storm of inflammation that's really hard to turn around. That's a very good example of out of control fire, completely unbalanced fire.
Melissa has a question when you have a second.
Oh, okay. Who does?
I do.
Oh.
So going back to that exhaustion, will one recover if they do rest? Will one be able to experience the full fire that is lovely this time of the year?
Well, there's you will have to rest. You will just have to rest. And if you are able, to the extent that you're able to rest without resentment, right? To just rest without wanting it to be different from how it is.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes.
That's really a determining factor in this. If you're like, I'm resting. Why am I not getting better? I'm resting. I'm power resting. No, that's not going to do it, because that's still a yang approach to a yin process. So you can use fire in terms of fire's incredible creativity, right? Because fire energy is incredibly creative. So it would be a good time to do quiet artwork or quiet creative projects, or simply give yourself some time to sit in a beautiful place and watch the campfire and go to bed early. Really focusing on sleep, making sure you're getting enough water, enough hydration, because fire really does use up a lot of oxygen and it uses up a lot of water. But you have to allow yourself to be okay with what's happening. That's what's going to generate the most retained chi. I mean, you can do the getting and spending thing, but then you will limp through the rest of the year, and that won't be fun.
No.
Christmas will be miserable.
Okay.
So, sad to say. So yeah, take the time now, do what's relaxing, be outdoors, because usually in the fire season, depending on where you live, I mean, Teresa, you're probably not spending a lot of time sitting in the sun at this point, but here, getting outside and just being outside, but not doing stuff, not exerting.
Okay.
And one of the things that fires are really prone to, that will be their undoing every time, is FOMO.
That's me, Miss FOMO, classic FOMO, and I am doing that right now. I have cabin fever, so I've been down for some time. And I let it happen, because well, I couldn't do anything about it. I slept almost for 2 days straight. I was up for maybe an hour and boom. So I obviously needed the rest. And now I'm like, okay, what am I missing out on? Oh my God, there's a potluck on Saturday. I need to be better. Oh, and then there's another potluck on Sunday. And then I drive myself insane.
Maybe there will always be another potluck. It's okay. You can let them go by. They're just like buses. There'll be another one along in a few days. Where do you live in the world?
I live in southern New Mexico, so we're like hot.
I wondered if you were from that part of the world with your last name.
Oh, right. Yeah, definitely. Yep. I'm Native
Yeah.
American. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very known name. Which
Yes.
part, where in southern New Mexico?
Well, I live in Socorro, New Mexico, but my Pueblo, my dad is half Navajo and half Pueblo. I'm more related to the Pueblo side, so we're in Santa Clara. So that's going to be
Oh,
north, yeah, near Santa Fe.
yeah, I know where Santa Clara is. Yeah.
Right.
When I go and spend time with my teacher, it's in Ojo Caliente.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Yeah. So it's. Oh, and there's dances. There's dances going on now, huh?
yes.
Oh,
If-
I'm sorry.
If they have feasts, again, COVID.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, do your best
Thank you.
to rest. I know that this is not the last year that these dances will happen.
Right.
Not the last year that you'll all be together.
Thank you.
May the rains come down. All right, so salts and minerals become really important in the summer and to fire because of sweat. Now, sweat's ruled by water, but the heat causes a lot of loss of minerals. So it's really important that you replace those minerals. And a lot of the foods that we naturally gravitate toward in the summer, like cucumbers and celery and tomatoes and fruits, they're very water heavy. They're very water heavy foods. So that's good. But staying moist enough in the heat of summer is really important. It also helps to keep that fire calm. So Melissa, maybe some baths also. Some baths with some nice calming oils or herbs, whatever you have, would be another good way to rest during fire. We're not quite there yet, but we're coming up on it. Fire's virtue. I couldn't find the word. Fire's virtue is propriety, which is interesting. Propriety is, it's things that are proper. But the other thing that's interesting about that word is it comes from the same Latin root as proper, but the word for clean. And we talk about baptism by fire. We talk about fire leveling the playing field, fire making everything clean again. So the idea of propriety in fire is, in a sense, it's similar to what we talked about in wood, knowing where the edge is. Oh my God. And being able to back away from that edge and reference the interior rather than the exterior. So with fire element people, that's that ability to, as Sarah Ellen found, who is a very strong fire constitution, she came up with the idea of the do-over. So you can talk to her about almost anything that sounds fun, and yeah, she suffers from FOMO like most fires, and she's ready to go. She's on it. Yes, this sounds great. I want to do this. We're going to do this. Yes, we're going to do this. And then a day or two later, the phone call will come. I need a do-over. Okay, on what? Well, remember how I said I was going to fly to Fiji with you next week? I can't do that because I have an appointment with my physical therapist. No, it's that idea of the instantaneous quality of fire needing the capacity for reflection at the same time. So it's to be able to see ourselves in the fire light, but also be able to reference ourselves on the inner. So that incredible spontaneity of fire being tempered by reflection and the ability to change your mind and to be okay with that. It's an interesting it's an interesting process for a fire and a metal to be friends. It's taken us a long time to get to the place where we are really good at accommodating each other's ways of being, and still loving that. So this idea of things happening fast, fire constitution people are in themselves trying to express and experience as much expansion and as much diversity, as much variety as that they see reflected in the world as physically possible in a lifetime. And it takes a lot of energy to do that. And they don't all, so the propriety sometimes comes in recognizing when you have enough energy to participate and when you don't. When you stay home from the potluck and when you go. So fire is damaged by emotional stress and too much use of the eyes. So we generally associate the eyes with liver and kind of secondarily with kidney, but we also have in the English language, at least, the phrase, the eyes are the windows of the soul. And in Chinese medicine, the soul exists in the heart. So that relationship between the eyes and the heart is also really powerful. Having what we're feeling moving through our eyes, seeing the things and the people around us and bringing it deeply into our hearts. I think I talked about all of that stuff. So one of the charming things about fire that sometimes gets them in trouble is how entertaining they are, because they can move at such a pace. They can handle all kinds of diverse things at the same time. I mean, I always think of Robin Williams as the perfect example of that quality of fire that is so deeply entertaining because it is so phenomenally fast moving. I mean, it was like seeing fireworks go off in his head and the words tumbling out faster and faster and faster and faster. That's kind of the poster child of fire. And the other side of that is not very fun, clearly. So that when things do get dark and things do get hard, it's not easy. So that idea, one of the archetypes I like for fire is the sacred clown, which exists in a lot of different traditional societies. The idea that the court jester is also the sacred clown. The idea that there should be someone who sees everything that's going on in the space and has the immunity to be able to tell the truth about it in real time and not get punished. Because in that that connects that heart expression back to what's real. All right. What else? Okay, so let's go on to Earth, because we got to get Earth and Metal in half an hour. Ah! If only I could talk like a fire. We get this done. All right. Earth, right in the middle of everything, all the time. Not in the same way as fire, not from the standpoint of FOMO, of wanting to have all of these experiences and wanting to be able to take all this in, but from the standpoint of being the center, being the home office, being the place from which all of the representatives go out and do their thing. And then the place that they come back to get rejuvenated. So we talked about how Earth, with the help of triple warmer and pericardium, comes out to midwife the changes of seasons, so that transfer of energy can be as smooth as possible. So when Earth is out of balance, when we're ungrounded, when we're not feeling stable and solid and in a dynamic relationship with Earth, and when I say Earth, I mean the big E, Earth. Yes, it's the soil. Yes, it's the ground, but it's also her with a capital H, Earth. So when we're not stable, when we're not sturdy, when we're not grounded in that place, those transitions, whether they are the actual seasonal transitions, like the one that's coming up later this month, where we're going to go from wood to fire, or whether it's the transitions in a day, going from work to home or home to work, whether it's the season of going from unmarried to married or married to unmarried, or not having children to having children, whatever that transition might be. When we don't have that cultivation of Earth, we are very vulnerable in the process of change. This is why it's very common for people to pass at the equinoxes and solstices, and also at the cross quarters as well. So halfway through the spring, halfway through the summer, halfway through the autumn, and halfway through the winter. Very common for people to get ill during that time. You can almost count on it, that change of season comes, and lots of people are going to get a cold, or lots of people are going to get run down, or they're fighting something, or your autoimmune clients are going to have a flare, or somebody's going to have another occurrence of an illness that they deal with chronically. So that stability, that strength, that feeling of home that comes from having the Earth in the center is really irreplaceable. What else I want to say about that? Yeah, so here's what Franklin Sills says about it. Earth is the great pivotal point, the great potential point of return to our subtler sources. It is only when we can be fully here, without judgments, opinions, beliefs, without past and future, that the Earth element becomes the great pivotal point, the springboard to Tao. So this talks about that relationship between earth and fire, earth and the heart, especially that, that little shred of the Wu Dao that came in and is planted in the earth of the body. I have written down here, earth is our womb and our tomb, at least for the physical aspects of our experience. So when people are in trouble, or earth people are in trouble, it's usually because they are not well situated in a healthy way in the earth, so that they resist change and they resist movement. One of the big enemies of nature and life is stasis. We talked about that, I think, the first time. Stasis is death, and stasis is the thing that Earth has to overcome. Entropy, things that the natural tendency of things to break down. Inertia. Earth is much slower moving than fire, or wood, or water, or even metal. It's denser, it's slower, it's harder to get in motion, but it has a lot of momentum once you get it in motion. So this is one of the reasons why earth element people have so many problems with illnesses of stagnation, things that just get thick and boggy, humid, damp things like blood sugar issues, like candida, like sinus infections. Those sorts of things are very kind of typical expressions of the earth not being able to move very well. So one of the things that seems to work pretty well with people who are having trouble with transitions, or people with earth constitution who are having trouble keeping their energy in motion. They're trying not to stagnate, but it's taking a lot of energy. That, in my mind, usually points to the control cycle and to the starfish connection. Let's see, you've all had that. So going back to those kind of mutual regulation relationships. So Earth having to provide the channel for the water to flow through, and Earth allowing the roots of the trees and plants to penetrate it so that it doesn't erode. So getting Earth in motion, it's almost antithetical to fire. Fire, you have to encourage some containment. You have to dig trenches around the edge of the fuel. You have to remove the fuel or limit the oxygen to keep it contained. With the Earth, you almost have to get behind and push to get it rolling. Like the boulder or the snowball. Just pushing to get it in motion. So this tendency to stay at rest rather than to stay in motion is one of the big things that will pull Earth out of balance. And the distractions of finding someone to take care of then becomes then can become an unfortunate focus, because the the expression that happens in the earth when it's out of balance in that way is one that can be smothering and oppressive, rather than, and I think we may have talked about that before, very often we talk about earth as being the parental energy, the good parent, the good mommy or daddy. And so if we didn't have a good mommy or daddy, maybe we look for one in our partner or in our friends or in our practitioner. But really a better description is the midwife. The midwife who has the capacity for compassionate detachment. Did I tell you the story about the difference between sympathy and empathy? Did we talk about that? Because this is very much the kind of the crux of the earth energy. So sympathy is when you go out for a walk, and off in the distance you hear someone cry, "Help! Help! Help!" and you follow the call, and you see that this poor person has fallen into a well, and they are so distressed that you jump in to comfort them. "Oh yes, you're so right. Yes, this really is miserable. This is awful. Oh my God, you were kidding. This is terrible. You poor thing." And empathy is when you go out for the walk and you hear that cry for help in the distance, you follow it, and you see someone is in distress because they've fallen into a well. And so you go get a ladder and you hold the ladder while they climb out. And if they've got a broken leg, then you go down using the ladder and you help them climb the ladder up, right? So it's a matter of, do you retain your efficacy or do you lose your efficacy? In the sympathy, you merge with the suffering and you become part of the problem. In empathy, you can identify the problem, you can see how the person is suffering, and you don't merge with it. You maintain your ability to be effective and provide a solution when a solution is needed, and bring the person back to a place of comfort and care. So this idea of earth as having to merge, having to be so deeply engaged with everyone that they care about, this is the function of imbalance. The compassionate detachment of earth, where there's just this lovely outpouring of love and care, and yet autonomy and sovereignty, so that the person who is giving the care is no greater or lesser than the person receiving the care. They maintain an equal relationship. There's not a one up, one down situation. Whenever you feel pity for someone, this comes from my teacher too, as soon as you feel pity for someone, as soon as you look at an animal and say, "Oh, that poor thing," now you put them, you make them less than what they are. You destroy their majesty. So when earth acts as midwife, by holding the space, by being the support, by providing the strength that a person needs in their transition, whatever that transition might be, they retain their autonomy and their sovereignty and their ability to make choices. And the earth person doesn't get in the middle and say, "Oh, no, honey, that's not a good choice. You don't have to do that." They provide that field of care within which that person goes through that process and learns what they need to learn. And that is the function of the midwife. The midwife, if the mother who's birthing this baby is so tired that she just can't do any more, the midwife doesn't, jump in the hole with her and say, "Oh, honey, you're right. It's really hard. It's so hard. Oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe the baby will come back tomorrow." No, that midwife says, "Buck up, Buttercup. You got to push. This is really important now. I got you. I'm going to hold you. We got somebody on the other side. You got to push. You got to get this baby out now." You know, this is there's compassion and there's fierce compassion. And sometimes that fierce compassion is what's needed in that earth element. But we kind of take the, we take the balls out of earth. We take the ovaries out of earth. We kind of make it into this, this sort of Donna Reed character. And you're all too young to know who Donna Reed was. Why am I saying that? I can't think of a modern equivalent. Who's very submissive and deferential. And Demeter was not submissive when her daughter was stolen. She was pissed. She killed everything on the earth, and she was the earth. She just laid waste to it all because she was fierce. She wanted that girl back. That's the power that we don't honor enough in the earth element, is that incredible ability to if I have to walk through hell, I want an earth to go with me, but I want a balanced earth. I don't want an imbalanced earth who, we're walking through hell and she's like, oh yeah, this is terrible, I hate this. Like, no, come on, keep going, we got this, come on, keep going, come on, get going, don't you stop there, come on, keep going. That's what I want. I want a wood out front, right, to kind of ward off all the really scary stuff. But I want that, I want a good earth to walk through hell with, because they have the stamina, they have the strength, they have the character, they have the capacity to hold steady, to hold firm when that's needed. All right, so we flew through that. Now we will fly through metal. So metal also gets a bad rap. Here at the autumnal equinox, where the chi drops out of the above ground and goes back to the mystery, as it must in order to be regenerated. This is this is where the earth will be reborn, but it has to die first to be reborn. This is not, modern culture in North America is not one that respects the need and requirements and sanctity and complexity of death, decomposition, and decay. We're constantly chasing youth. We're constantly chasing the muchness. So this transition between the muchness and the dark is a tough one, but especially in this country where we don't even know what to say to people when they have a significant loss. We are so inept at that in North America, and yet the metal energy is all about what just happened. What just happened? How did this season of expansion provide growth for every part of manifest reality? What new thing, what new idea, what new possibility was generated while the chi was above ground? And what miraculous understanding is there now to retrieve from that as it begins to dismember and fall apart? So the fascination of metal for taking things apart is not just, it's not just morbidity. But it is morbidity too. But it is a fascination with what's left after the party's over. right? Everybody's gone home from the party and, oh, somebody left their sweater and, oh, what a beautiful sweater. I hope they come back for that. And, oh, look at, they really, really like the green beans, but nobody touched the okra. I don't understand. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe we'll make that one again. It's seeing what happened after the big explosion of muchness. And what is after that big explosion of muchness, where is the value that's left behind? And how can we tease out the value so that it can be nurtured and handed over to the next generation? Because that's what they have to make themselves out of, is the value that came from that huge explosion of the beauty of nature. So we have to go through this period of walking in the darkness, this period of sifting through the party mess, this process of taking apart all the leaves, all the seeds, all the nuts, all the branches, all the soil, all the dead animals, all the birds, all the feathers, everything that has worked its way back down into the darkness and is offering itself as a gift to what's next. But that gift is prepared by the metal element. So in a way, we've got, we could say that there's a certain quality of midwifery that goes on in metal as well, because it's a transformation. Just as there's a transformation from the seed that has pulled all of that intensive energy inside itself and hits the above ground and explodes with that nuclear reaction into a brand new tree or a brand new plant or brand new animals. So that happens again at the other side of the year, where the things that die need to go through a reclamation process. And metal is the discernment to know what to keep and what to give away. What has meaning, what has depth, what has the potential to feed something new, something that's coming, and what has run its course and should be left to rest, maybe for a season, maybe forever. So this idea of being poised between the past and the future, being poised between the ancestors and the descendants is kind of the special gift of metal. So you see metals often thinking about, well, how is this going to impact, what's the impact going to be down the line? So very different from the fire expression of, this is great right now. I'm having a wonderful time right now. Metals are like, yeah, oh man, that was a great time. I had a great time. And how is that going to affect the kids? How's that going to affect the next generation or many generations to come? How is that going to filter into the constellating of magic for the generation and regeneration of all of manifest reality? So metals do like to take things apart. And one of the sweet things that Sarah said to me once, where she was trying to let me know that I was going a bit too far in the metal department, is she said, what was it exactly? That diamond is really well polished. Like, oh, okay, got it, leave it alone. So the idea of the minerality of metal, metal relates to the golden years. I am in my metal element phase of life. The idea of finding the gold hidden in the darkness, finding the diamond hidden in the darkness. Carl Jung, very much a metal energy person, definitely a metal element constitution, and a Leo, but that ability to create the body of work that he created was, a water would have done that differently. A fire would have done that differently. An earth would have done that differently. Wood would have done that differently. It is very characteristically metal as a body of work. So metal does all this dismantling, takes apart the minerals, the ions, then delivers them to water. And now, with the work that metal has done to dismantle the previous cycle, it provides water with the ability to be magnetic, right? Because it's delivered ions, minerals, metals to water. So now water can be magnetic and generate new life. Let's see, what else did I want to say about that? Maybe that's all I need to say about metal. Really got it distilled. Polish that diamond. Any questions about anything in the past 5 hours and 57 minutes?
I'm not seeing any hands yet. Any comments? Yes, Karen.
I'd just like to say that I thought that was really beautiful, describing how metal feeds water. I never really thought about it in terms of the ionization process, feeding the decomposing and everything that then feeds those minerals to water, so that water can be magnetized and create new growth. And I see so many people come through my practice where they need the connection between metal to water because they're at an end and they haven't been able to figure out the next steps or trust and whatever those issues are that, and I really love seeing that piece of it now. Thank you.
Great, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because the winter solstice is one of the toughest places for people. They can't quite, they're having a hard time completing the metal process because they don't have a lot of context for it, unless they've got, unless they're metal element constitution, in which case they've been living in that the whole time. But they don't have a lot of cultural models for what good letting go looks like. What are you doing, Butters? And they very much want to move on into the next cycle, but they can't. There's just, that bridge isn't there. And it's not because the earth hasn't shown up, it's because the metal hasn't been completed. Oh, somehow in that gesture, I got 10,000 steps today. Go figure.
Excellent.
I love it when it sends off the
Signal.
fireworks.
All right, I don't see any more hands up.
This has not been a very questiony group.
Deborah, can I ask you a question? What,
Yeah.
and I know,
Oh, yeah.
what, now you were saying before, like you're a metal earth.
Uh-huh.
When people are like water, wood, whatever they are, how do these play out. So for example, if you are, so I'm like equal wood, fire and earth. And when I look at, or you're a metal with the earth, like there's lots of things that are juxtaposing each other
Uh-huh.
with some of these elements, and people both, I'm just how those about yourself, like the earth metal portion.
Well, it's
You don't-
funny. I didn't really claim the earth until maybe 3-4 years ago, in spite of the fact that I have a very earth body. I have very earth colored skin. I mean, duh. But I just didn't. I just didn't connect to earth. And I think part of that was it was how I was looking at earth. I was really looking at that imbalance, and with my metal, I don't tend to get enmeshed in that way. So it was puzzling to me, and I'm not a worrier. I am not a worrier at all. But I had to finally realize, oh yeah, one of my big physical issues is managing my blood sugar, and it has been for 30 years. Of course I'm an earth, or of course I have strong earth. So a lot of times you see it in what they're dealing with physically. But being a primary metal with earth, it's just a little a different coloration than if I were a metal water, which has a completely different presentation. Like David Feinstein, very much metal water. We're both metal, but we're super different in how we express. So he's the world of academia was a real comfortable place for him. That holds no appeal for me. It's not connected enough. So for me, my earth pushed my metal in a different direction than his water pushed his metal. Does that make sense?
I think you also have to factor in I forgot what they're called, but like, isn't David a digital? And I'm guessing you're not.
Oh yeah, the sensory type. Oh
Sensory
yeah, and I'm a
type,
tonal
yeah.
through and through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that does make a big difference. But the things that might activate my grief as a metal earth might be different than what grieves him as a metal water. So it all just provides the subtle coloration of the incredible richness and diversity of life.
I have one last quick, if I can, is that okay, Teresa? I just am
Fine
having
with
a hard
me.
time.
I don't want to go up with those crazy
Debra,
people.
I just am curious, besides what people's imbalances that they come back with, besides doing an assessment, is there any other way about how to figure out someone's elements? So like someone comes in and they're like, their gallbladder consistently, or their heart or whatever, you can get an idea, but is there any other recommendations?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, my bias is I'm a tonal, so my bias is I listen to them. I listen to the quality of their voice and what they talk about. So if somebody's talking about, I'm really involved in this cause because it's going to help connect kids with an understanding of the environment so that later they're really going to get involved in this. I mean, that to me I would be hearing metal in that. But if somebody comes in and says, there's just not enough hours in the day to do all the wonderful things I want to do. It's driving me crazy. I just never get enough done just because there's so much fun stuff to do. Okay, so that's a fire, right? So you listen for where their passion is or where their lack of passion is. You listen for the type of language that they use. Very often woods will use language of competition. Very often waters will use language of movement and motion and flow and mystery and dream. Fires will use a lot of language of expansion and variety and novelty. Earths will use a lot of language of caring and stability and foundation. You just kind of listen into what they're saying, and if they have a strong sound to their voice that really points a particular direction. Like I think I told you about that woman that used to work at my son's company, who drove me crazy every time he was on a call with her, because she has this little baby voice, and she was so it was like, oh my God, and she always complained. So she was a very out of balance water. Everything was horrible. Everything could be better. Everything was terrible. And there's just no point. Everything was futile and terrible and all delivered in this little tiny baby voice. It's like, kill me now. So I have no idea what she even looked like or what things she was dealing with in her, in her life as far as health or anything like that. But just from her, the quality of her voice and the nature of how and what she talked about, I would bet the ranch on water for her. And she was a pretty clear expression. And this is where it gets tricky, is that there are so many subtle expressions because of all the combinations. Like you with three that are pretty close together. That's going to muddy the waters a lot. But if you think about what you do in a typical day, you could not do that without those three elements being very strong in you. I can't imagine. I can't imagine how you do what you do. Oh.
So how do you help metals let go?
Oh, I just saw that. So helping metals let go. It is a tough one, but I think the strongest thing is making that connection back between metal and water, really emphasizing the cyclical nature of things. Because we have such a screwed up relationship to death in this culture, that especially for metals, they can get really, really caught in the finality of it all, when that's not the reality of nature at all. So there's no point in clinging to what's dead and dying. Celebrate it and carry it with you into the next new experience. Make something new grow from it. And that's not always an easy sell, because when the metal is really out of balance, they will be slaves to their systems and their routines. Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah, can I add to that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So some specifics. I try to get people to think about what are the treasures that they can pull out of the whole experience, even if the experience didn't end the way they were hoping to. There's got to be some treasure they can take with them, because the whole thing about metal is that end of the cycle. And what Debra just said about the finality, don't think of it like that so much, because when you're dealing with, especially with a large intestine, think about it. What's the compost? What's the treasure? And if somebody's a gardener, that's not a good analogy, because compost is going to be a treasure to them. So what's the garbage? What's the What's
Yeah.
the chapter? And so I start that conversation and I might then check and see if I need to connect the starfish connection, or I might see if it's holding neurovasculars, if it's really, really emotional for them.
Yeah.
So those
Yeah,
are,
that's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, that is absolutely right. And you have brought me to a poem to end on. And it's from David White, who's yet another of my favorite poets. It's called The Well of Grief. Let me see if I can remember it. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down, turning down, turning down, turning down through the black water to the place we cannot breathe. We'll never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness, glimmering, the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. So here we are, back at the beginning. It's been a pleasure to be with you all these 3 Wednesdays. And I hope this has been helpful.
This has
So,
been great, Deborah. Thank you so very much. And I really want to
Oh.
thank the advanced practitioners that added a lot, because there are some people who just finished class 5 and they are just
Yeah.
learning this stuff. So they get to dive really deep the first year. So this is a really great thing. So Deborah, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay. And
Mm.
you guys email me if you have any questions, and I will get this recording out to you as soon as possible.